Hello and welcome everybody to this week's application performance session, 12th of September, and we are back on this. Very happy to be here with Coase. So I do have the first point on the agenda. I just noticed that in certain circumstances with the new approval rules in place, rebasing and therefore updating Startup CSS can require getting new reviewer and maintainer approvals. I'm currently working on an issue around that. Are you aware about the new approval rules? Okay. There is a link. Let me just quickly share my screen. There, to me, it feels like these things are pretty good, but also a little not quite fully finished, to say the least. I recently run into this. So Nick is driving this, and for a couple of reasons, there were a lot of changes. We are now needing approval by a code owner. That will be one thing. What else was there? Once you made all your, or once the MR is approved, and that is kind of the issue here. Once the MR is approved and there are more changes, as in commits coming in, or basically everything is touched. Recently, that was okay, and the approval was still valid, which was negotiable. But now this is a big no-no, and the approval will actually be kind of invalidated, which is a fantastic thing. But if I am bringing up this example MR, this is kind of biting us a little, because I feel like rebasing is definitely something we would encourage people to do so. But there we have it. If you rebase, so this was actually absolutely fine. The maintainer rebased once more, which then broke the startup CSS, because this MR is actually touching the startup CSS, which is so far so good. But once you're rebuilding it, you actually need to ping all of the maintainers once more. So that is probably not the most efficient way we can deal with that. I don't think we'll be touching the approval rules, but regarding startup CSS, we might want to think about any other workarounds on this.
So to get into some details, I haven't read the thread on the Slack. Is it only about the startup CSS and requiring the maintainer reviews and the code owners reviews, or for everything?
Yeah, for every MR, these are the new approval rules.
All right. Yeah. How to do that best? I don't know. Definitely an important discussion, and quite a wide one. I'm not sure how to react to that. Basically, when the maintainer, I think there is a command with which you can just rebase the MR in the UI without having to check out and retest that. And I think maintainers do use that quite often. But yeah, things might break at that moment, even if no commit itself changed. So like just rebase and just put in the old commits without changing them on the top might break some things.
My two cents on this, and let's have a lengthy discussion about this on the corresponding issue that I'm about to create. But the startup CSS changes that are breaking, these are SCSS files which are checked into a repository, but they are 100% auto-generated, and nobody other than the machine is supposed to be touching them. You made a point, which is absolutely true, that rebasing might break something. I'd argue that it actually shouldn't be able to break anything except for maybe a merge conflict. We can't avoid them. This will always happen. But other than a merge conflict, so what I see us biting in here is actually having the generated startup CSS files checked into a repository. And I feel like currently I'm on the point where I'll be like, okay, if this is completely auto-generated, then let's just put it into a git ignore, because we are not touching them anyhow, and have them auto-generated once we're running our pipeline. And that should be it probably. And we are not dealing with this basically by hand, what we're currently doing, and applying diffs, etc. But so that's my current point. I'm not sure if I'm overseeing complexity here. Could be.
Yeah, I'm on your side with this one. Just worried about if we have proper consistency, and we probably have that within the built-in environments. Like if we build that CSS on staging, that it is the same that is built on production, and when we build the distros. But yeah, I think the generated files could be excluded. We should be safe in the built-in persistency.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, it's gonna be interesting because the auto-generated files are actually SCSS files, so they are transpiled or compiled to CSS once more, so there's at least this double layer of complexity. And I could, maybe it is just for performance reasons, so we're probably not running this on every pipeline. We'll see. I'll open up an issue. I definitely will include Paul Slaughter in this, because I know he wrote a lot of these things that are actually leading to our startup CSS generator. Which brings me,
yeah, and
sorry,
do ping front end channel that a lot of discussion would be there, I think.
I'll bring it to the front end weekly meeting as well. Very, very good point. Let me just quickly make a note on this. Sweet. Which brings me to my next topic. It's all about startup CSS today. I've recently been working on a bigger feature, and it turned out I've actually broken startup CSS on our sign-in page while I introduced a feature flag, and it was unnoticed for multiple weeks. To quickly, before I show anything about this, what has happened here or what broke it, and that is important to know. If you are dealing with any kind of UI elements that are startup CSS related, and you are working with a feature flag, startup CSS, or the generator behind it, will not know this by default. So it will basically always opt into all flags on. And that was, in my case, I've built a new feature which was working perfectly fine in startup CSS, but I've actually broken the old thing. So when the feature flag was off, I've reintroduced all this flickering. So yeah, two issues that I'm seeing here. I've already spoken with Paul to this. We are currently working on updating the docs for startup CSS, because I feel like this issue is not very known at this point. That would be one thing. And I was a little surprised that nothing yelled at me since this is our sign-in page. Turns out, there we are. Turns out currently we are not monitoring the sign-in page at all. So that might be something we wanna add in there, and I'll be working on an MR on this. That kind of makes sense. And what I haven't found the time yet to dig deep on this, but regarding startup CSS, what are we trying to improve here? It's basically what was the measurement called? I always say flickering, but that's not what it is. The content shift, kind of. So I'd be curious about our monitoring, and we probably would need to reduce bandwidth quite a bit to actually see any examples. So that is something which is still around for me to investigate. Like, do we actually have any monitoring or maybe even automated tests to see if this still does what it should do, and if we haven't broken it along the way.
Yeah, it's a very good point to actually have the landing pages in the performance testing. Yeah, I wondered too if the layout shift would be noticed on a good bandwidth. To be fair, in the linked merge request that fix that, there are video recordings of the issue. I assume they are only visible as much only on a bad network and with cache disabled, right? So going through the pages should be fine on the second page because the CSS is already in the cache. But yeah, definitely having that in the performance pages URL list that you linked is a good thing. Yeah, definitely. And basically, that's one of the most important things. Because that's landing experience. That's something we want to be as smooth as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. And probably even for our very first time users with a clean cache, they'll be landing on the sign-in page. So that is probably quite a common scenario. Last but not least, another thing about Startup CSS, and I'm curious if you've encountered the same. To put this in an open way, have you within the last months or something have been working on an MR which required some changes to Startup CSS?
No.
Nothing. Okay. Because I feel like this is quite a common behavior and we should get it fixed. So the good thing about this is is that the right MR? Yeah, that's great. The good thing about is the generation of the Startup CSS is completely automated, and this is fantastic. So for the first one, this thing will fail. The Startup CSS job will fail, basically telling you, hey, something has changed in the code. This will require us to update our Startup CSS. Here is the div, just go apply this, commit this, run this job once more. It will then catch up with the update. We should be green and we should be good to go. Job done. Perfectly fine. What I see happening all the time is what we're currently looking at is the very first failing job after the rebase. And it will give me a git diff in the EE folder for the startup sign-in CSS. So once you apply that and run the thing once more, it will fail on you again. Where you'll be like, okay, I obviously did something wrong, but you usually didn't, because maybe I did in that case, or I just opened the wrong pipeline. Or I actually did do something wrong. But yeah, once you've got EE sorted out and checked in everything, the pipeline will fail on you again, providing you another diff with basically a very, very similar diff once more, but this time not in EE, but in CE. Once you applied that again, you'll actually be green and good to go. This feels like quite a waste of pipelines currently. So that definitely does make up for a good issue and a potential optimization. So we can just be more efficient and maybe save some money when running all these pipelines as well.
Are they run sequentially? Have you investigated that? Like for EE and then CE?
What do you mean by they in that case? These those two pipelines, or?
Yeah, so you've at the first you got the EE issue, but not the CE issue, right? So I wonder if we have a code like run first thing and only then run the second thing, and if both pass, only then we succeed. Why? The point I think that you're making, why didn't we get both issues in the first run, right? So I wonder if they're sequential there. and if they can be parallelized.
I haven't investigated on this, but if I don't get it wrong, then so the thing is, you would have to run a full pipeline to actually run this job. And if there's a pipeline running and you'll be starting a new one, as far as I know, it would then be skipping the old pipeline and basically aborting the process and just continue with the new one. So that will be hard to reproduce, probably.
I haven't checked the pipelines we have. I haven't dig into that. If you want, we can just pair review that. Maybe not on this session asynchronously, and check how that is run, and maybe try parallel in that.
Absolutely, will do so. I'll create an issue for it and ping you, and then we'll see. Maybe we can bring it to our Friday's pairing session or something. And regarding the sign-in page, I will make sure that we add the URL to our monitoring so we don't miss out on these again. Sweet. That was it with what I've had today. Any last minute items? Anything you'd like to add?
No, thank you for holding this session and sharing all this stuff. It was very cool. Thanks.
Likewise. Thanks so much for joining. And yeah, let's I'll ping you on the issues I'll be creating, and then I'll be seeing you in 2 weeks, I suppose.
Cool. Yeah, thanks.
Awesome. See you then. Have a good one.
Thanks. Bye. I was just wondering about one thing before you drop.